In my opinion, in the next 3-4 years, the payroll professional job would become more of a specialist, subject matter expert, adapting to technology, change management kind of role, rather than doing pure payroll operation. The
Sure.
mundane, the number crunching, all of that will go away. It will become a very evolved role. And if I have to have one piece of input for all these payroll professionals today, I think they should start investing towards that.
Welcome to the Payroll Podcast with your host, Nick Day. Find out what it takes to truly discover what it takes to elevate your career within payroll as we meet with the industry leaders who are shaping the industry for tomorrow.
Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. My name is Nick Day, CEO of JJ Recruitment Group, specialist global payroll recruiters. And today I'm super excited to welcome Ranga Seshadri, CEO of global payroll solutions provider Neeyamo, to the show. Now, many of you may already be familiar with Ranga because he's quite an inspirational leader, a true visionary, I would say, in the world of global payroll. So it's my privilege to welcome Ranga to the show today. For those not familiar, well, Ranga is a craftsman when it comes to building cohesive global teams. He has extensive experience in creating HR and payroll shared service centers for truly global organizations. And he's managed large-scale HRO service delivery engagements covering operational consulting, technology, global payroll, and process management. Now, at Neeyamo, Ranga has pioneered and architected the much-acclaimed global payroll service model and has helped expand its reach to over 125 countries. Ranga has been named HRO Superstar for 3 consecutive years by HRO Today, and the Neeyamo business is now providing payroll and HRO solutions to clients in over 190 countries. Today, we're going to be talking all about global payroll, and I can't wait to get started. So, Ranga, welcome to the Payroll Podcast. How are you feeling today?
Pretty good, Nick. Thank you. Thank you for having me in the show. I'm pretty excited.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. An absolute pleasure. Let's start with the first question, something I ask all of my guests on the show, which is a very simple one to begin with. What does the word payroll mean to you?
Payroll means joy, happy faces, currency, all of that to me, because at the end of the day, payroll, for me as a payroll professional, it means fulfilling payroll promises for so many employees across the globe, or in our sense, so many customers. We just don't treat a customer as a customer, but the customer's employees as our customer. So for us, making sure it's on time, accurate every time. So that's what it means.
I love that. I think that's how many people would describe the world of payroll. In terms of its importance, we've got to be accurate. We've got to be on time. We've got to look after end user as number one. Now, something before we jump into the pressing issues that are affecting multinational organizations, there was something on your website that I saw that really I wanted to explore in a little bit more detail. It states in nice bold capital letters on your website that a new era is dawning in global payroll. I just wondered if you could tell me a little bit more about what you mean by this and what is it that's really changed that's made you sort of make that bold statement on the start of your website?
The word global and payroll a few years back was non-existent, right? So if you take any large corporations, right? If you take global Fortune 1000, global 1000 corporations across the globe, the way global payroll was envisioned was for large countries, they had solutions. And then for the smaller countries where what we coined the term tail countries, where it's less than 1,000 employees, they had a very stitched, managed solution. There was a provider who would probably, if they are headquartered in US or Germany or UK, they had a little bit of a sophisticated solution. But when it came to the rest of the 20, 30, 40, 50 countries they were present, spaghetti, no technology, spaghetti of systems, manual processes, compliance was an issue. So it was messy in a lot of sense. And that's when we realized that if we had to create a single platform to process payroll for every country in the world, right? The technology could be the solution that people are looking for. Look, we all, the founders of the company, the employees, a lot of us come from a very strong technology background, right? And if there was a problem, it could not be your mess for less. We realized that we had to fix the problem. It should be a technology approach. And given that we are new age company, we had the advantage of the newer technology which could solve these issues. And hence, we created what we call the payroll hyperloop, right? And that's the new age thing. What is the Neeyamo's global payroll hyperloop means? Two things. It means single payroll platform for every country that you operate in. Second thing, it means taking payroll from a batch processing to real time, right? So what we believe is with this hyperloop that we have created, we could really take payroll real time. For example, today payroll is considered a batch. You have a cutoff on 25th, you have various inputs coming in. With our technology solution, we really wanted to take it to so real time that if an employee wants to run his own payroll on the 10th of the month for the 9 days that he has worked, he or she should be able to do it, right? We really want to take it real time, right? So that's what you're seeing in our website. And what I'm talking, Nick, is not a pipe dream. We already implemented this kind of a solution in multiple customers. We are probably moving more and more closer to that hyperloop where what we call straight-through processing or real-time processing would be a reality with our solution the next 18 to 24 months, right?
Wow.
So there will be a time when we implement the solution, the employee can run this himself or herself can run the payroll real time. So that's what you're seeing, you talked about in the website, and that's what I call the Netflix moment or a Tesla moment where payroll is getting really redefined, right?
And that makes sense. And actually, it fast forwards a question I had planned later, but I think you've already explained it, which is, Neeyamo has a payroll hyperloop concept. And I wonder if you could tell us more about it. But I think you've kind of covered some of that in that explanation. It links to that new era. Now, I work in payroll recruitment. I speak to providers and payroll managers on a daily basis across all different industries, sectors, and variables, and so on. One thing I often hear in the industry is people say, look, we get lots of global payroll providers, but there's no provider that truly gives a total global payroll solution, all built in, don't need to use external partners, all legislation's covered. It's just a genuinely true global solution. Now, whether that exists now, if it doesn't exist now, will that exist in the future? And is that part of that payroll hyperloop process that you were talking about there? Is that all linked in?
It exists now with Neeyamo. So let me deconstruct the payroll hyperloop, right, and then you will understand why I'm saying it exists, right? So if we had to really take payroll real time and create a technology solution, we realized there are multiple parts to payroll. And we created this 4 or 5 different parts to payroll and then stitched them together and created the hyperloop seamlessly, right? The first part to payroll is the pre-payroll, right? Which is all your data interfaces that comes in. So because ideally, the engine that runs payroll is not going to make any mistake, right? So it's all about input, validating the input, and sending the right inputs. It's all about, otherwise garbage in is garbage out, right?
Sure.
So we created these. So there is a component which is the input validation, which is what we call is the PNC, which is our payroll global payroll platform. Integrates with the customer's ecosystem in terms of inputs. It could be their HRIS, multiple systems, gets the input, and there are several levels of validation that happens, right? Input validations. And all of this through AI, ML, we train them, we try to validate all the inputs that come in, make sure interfaces are working. And then that's the first part of the technology stack. The second part, once the inputs are validated, is sent to what we call our own native gross to net engines, right? So we've built these 125, 130 countries gross to net engines where the input comes into the engine, payroll gets processed, right? And the third part to this is the output part, which is your interfaces to GL, finance, your pay slips, your compliance. So we have our own compliance tool that ensures that all compliance are filed, the records are stored. So that's the third part to this. And then what happens is once you have these 3 parts together as part of the global payroll platform, then there are ancillaries that is needed. For example, you need an integration layer, which is our own integration layer that integrates with all of the client systems across the countries, right? Okay. So that is one. The second is the reporting layer, right? Because it's dashboards and reports and real time. So that's our own reporting layer. We also have allied systems like your time, your absence, your employee hub or your HRIS, mini HRIS. Please understand, Nick, if I really want to take payroll real time, make it fully automated, I need to have no parts that is manual. And this is not one country, this is across 125, 150 countries. So what we have is not only the payroll system, we also have the ancillary systems that are needed. For example, your time system, your absence system and stuff like that. So the whole technology stack goes and sits integrated with the client's technology stack. They could have a global HRIS, they could have a mobility system, they could have a finance system. So it's fully integrated, sits in the client's technology stack, and thereby creating the true hyperloop. And hence answering your question, which becomes a fully integrated system that takes care of your inputs, does payroll processing, does compliance, does reporting, integrates back into finance systems and others, and provides the customer and their employees a seamless technology solution and experience, right? So that's what we have built, and that's what we believe for a long time. I believe that global payroll was very manual, rudimentary. They didn't invent anything new. They just kept creating what I call a vendor managed solution. So a provider would go and kind of sign up with each country to a partner, stitch together and put together a solution, right? So we realized that this was not a scalable model. This was not a model that could work. And with the current scenario of so many transformations happening in organizations, businesses and stuff like that, payroll also had to transform, right? Because at the heart of every organization is employees, and the heart of every employee is getting paid on time correctly, right? So otherwise, the kind of dissatisfaction that an employee is can skyrocket, right? So at the heart of every, I keep saying, at the heart of every organization is the employee, and at the heart of every employee is your pay, compensation, paying it correctly on time every time. And for that, I think we have to have an evolved technology solution, and that's what we've built as an organization.
Credit to you here, Ranga. You've managed to articulate what I imagine is an incredibly complex process, and you've managed to make it very easily digestible and understandable for those listening. I imagine you've made it sound very simple. I'm sure behind the scenes to get to this stage in Neeyamo's journey, it must have been a little bit more complicated than that. But I'd be interested to know then, now that you have kind of simplified the process, as you say, garbage in, garbage out, so you get the first bit right, stitched together, outputs work, reporting, integration, I understand. So what are then the most pressing issues that multinational organizations are faced with when considering either global payroll vendors or even just knowing how to get from A to B, making sure their global payroll process is accurate, is on time, particularly if you're coming from an HR background or a non-payroll background and you've suddenly taken ownership of a global payroll operation that falls under your remit and you don't know where to start? What are some of the challenges and issues they need to be considering?
See, there is a very standard set of challenge when it comes to managing global payroll across so many countries and stuff like that, right? And that's what led to a solution like what we've built, right? Those 5-6 challenges. Number one, spaghetti of systems and Excel sheets and manual intervention. So everybody's dream, like either in business or anywhere, is to have a single technology across their entire scope of countries. Having said that, everybody realized it's difficult and complicated because each country is different. The compliances are different, the rules are different, systems are different, right? So first, number one, it was a spaghetti, and hence they were unsure about employee experience, employee getting paid on time. And the third important aspect is compliance, right? Are we doing the right thing as per the law of the land, right? And that's a non-negotiable topic for all global Fortune customers.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And you can see world over, organizations getting slapped huge amount of fines and all of that. Right. So first is they were wanting a technology which could run like any other, finance systems or HR systems or supply chain or material management, whatever. They could have a single technology. Now they were dreaming of a technology like that. Minimalistic systems, while there could be HRIS, there could be time systems, there could be, say, expense system, but they were looking at a minimalistic system, single payroll system, fully integrated. I mean, again, if there are manual intervention, that would cause problem. Number two challenge was compliance, right? Huge challenge around compliance. So many countries, so many different compliances. And the other part of this compliance aspect is changing laws of the land, right? Are they up to date? You were up to date till last year. Are we up to date currently? Is the system up to date, right? Are we doing the right filing? Do we have proof of the filing? So the compliance was the second big challenge. The third challenge was employee experience. Are my large countries like the US and Germany, largely populated countries, are they getting the same employee experience? Because if you ask me as a CHRO, for me, every employee is equal, right? The one employee in Africa should have the same experience as my thousands of employees sitting in the US, right? Are they getting great employee experience? So that's the third aspect to this. Fourth aspect around reporting. Am I getting real-time visibility into what's happening? So these are some of the broad level challenges that every global organization is facing. Technology, fully integrated, compliance, employee experience, reporting, real-time dashboard. If it was for a single country, these were getting addressed.
Yeah.
Right. But if it compounds, if it's a set of countries, now imagine their full countries of operation. That could be 50, 60, 75 countries in some cases, varied workforce, manufacturing had its own. And then look at the complexities of what industry you are in. It threw a different spoke, right? Manufacturing versus retail versus white collar, blue collar. Having a integrated, seamless technology solution was what they all dreamt of. And these were the challenges in doing it, right? And even today, lots of organizations are looking for someone to solve these challenges, right? And if you ask me, these are the top 4 or 5 challenges that always all global corporations always had when it came to managing payroll across different countries.
So are these the same challenges you refer to? I've read a couple of very good Neeyamo blogs, and I will put a link in the show notes to the Neeyamo website so people can go and read these for yourselves. But you talk a lot on the website about long tail challenges that the other payroll providers are sometimes reluctant to address, maybe due to geographical constraints, maybe complicated compliance, which you talked about, maybe low employee spread. You mentioned the one person in Africa, which might mean actually, is this something we really want to put our resources into? So how have Neeyamo overcome some of those long tail challenges that you refer to?
See, actually, when we started getting into this global payroll solution 7-8 years back, our first focus was on long tail, right? This was the biggest pain area that every global corporation has. Their big head, what we call high account countries, are getting managed well. But the long tail, the 10 Cs and the 5 Cs and the one employee and the 100 employee. And that's where we started to build. See, for example, if it's a long tail challenge, you have to think differently. It's not about doing things manually. You had to have a technology, right? You had to have a technology-led solution to manage long tail, right? If it was, say, 500 employees across 30 countries, right? And if you have to have a seamless experience, pay on time, every time, if you have to have robust compliance, if you have to have a robust employee experience, if you have to make sure that your reporting and analytics, you needed to have a platform that will run across these countries. And that's when our thought process of creating the technology started, our idea of creating the Hyperloop. We established ourselves as a leader in long tail. Every organization that heard our story, saw our solution, believed that we were rightly poised for long tail. And once over the first 3-4 years, we established as a solution provider for long tail, then they started to take us up to the big head. They said, if 70% of my countries are covered using the solution, the remaining 30% can be covered by their solution. And hence, they have a single technology solution for their global payroll.
So you identified the gap in the market, really, where the providers weren't looking at long tail, and you built out the other way around. You've reverse engineered it.
Because there was nobody that was doing it, right?
Sure.
And it was a walk in the park for me because nobody was claiming, everybody wanted the thousands of employees in Germany, UK, and US. And nobody bothered about Middle East, Africa, APAC, LATAM, where there are 50s and 100s and 5s and 1s employees. because it was difficult. Please understand, all of these long tail are very complex markets. Your LATAM, your Africa, your APAC, very, very complex markets when it comes to payroll, when it comes to compliance, right?
Must have been quite a risk, though. I'm just thinking about it commercially now. To go long tail first, you must have been doing that with a risk of hoping they would then give you the bigger employee payrolls later. But if that hadn't happened commercially, would that have been
All breakthroughs have happened because of the same, right? You look at what has happened with an electric vehicle or a Netflix or an iPhone or whatever.
Yeah.
Every big thing that has happened in the world is because they have identified something that was non-existent.
I like it. I like the risk taking here. I like the identification.
Yeah, because
like the fact
if you're pretty confident there is a pain, there is a need. First, we have identified there is a need. Now it's all about creating a solution for the need. And the solution will get refined. It won't get perfect the day one, but you had a near to perfect solution and then you refined it, right? And then it was easy from there to scale into and eat into the big head market, right? So big head market or big. So we clearly identified a need. We clearly knew no one was doing this.
I'm going a little bit off piste here, Ranga, but I'm keen just to understand it. So I hope you don't mind. But if we take ourselves right back then to when you identified that long-tailed challenge that's led Neeyamo to its growth and exponential growth really to where you are now. What was the moment where you realized there was a gap in the market for this, where you suddenly went, actually, there's a business here, not just a small business, but a business that's global, that we can grow, that we can scale, and let's do this. And where was that kind of, I guess, light bulb moment?
The light bulb moment, right? Yeah. Nick, actually, if you really knew us, we've been the founders, the 5 founders of the company, including me, have been in the HR outsourcing payroll space for a long time, right?
Yes.
So as we provided these services, we realized that more and more people and providers, and when I say providers, both payroll and HR service providers, had a business case for the big head and the long tail was getting ignored. And the more and more we talked to the CHROs, they were saying that, look, there is 50 to 60% of our countries which have this long tail, but we are suffering. But they wanted a solution. There was nobody with a solution. So they went with a stitch solution. They kind of find a local provider. They had no control. Compliance was an issue. And the more and more we thought, we realized that, yes, if we are able to break this, we will get uniquely positioned. We will have a clear run and there will be no competition, right? Because nobody was focusing. Nobody claimed that they were a long time. And that's when it started. The more and more we did this, the more and more there was conviction that, yes, this is an area that everybody wants a solution. There is no one providing a solution. And we had to think differently. And what is that difference? It had to be a technology solution. It cannot be your mess for less. It cannot be a manual solution. It cannot be based on vendor managed stitched solution. It cannot be an Excel sheet solution, right?
So I've got 2 questions for you. But based on the responses you've given me so far, I'm trying to listen with intent here and trying to pick up on some things that maybe my listeners are going to pick up on as well. So first thing is this: you talked a lot about the automation of processes. It has to be great tech, with less manual chances of error. And it needs to be real time. We've talked a lot about. So something that is interesting to me is we've gone through a global pandemic where in just the UK alone, I think there are 64 different changes to legislation, to new legislation like furlough, which came in just the UK market alone, which, that put a lot of UK payroll providers under stress. And if I put that on a global scale with furlough and different legislation coming out that's never been seen before, as a global provider, how did you react to that? How did you overcome the challenge of changing legislation in real time during the pandemic?
Brilliant. Okay. So please understand, a global payroll product, global payroll, is not bought for the tech stack. It's got for the functional layer. Okay. So we realized this very early. So the functional layer has to have more and more use cases in 3 dimensions. So the tech stack was available. Today's world, you have a very robust tech stack that you can build your platform on. People don't buy a payroll product for bells and whistles. People buy a payroll product for the functionality. Now, there are 3 aspects to this functionality. One is the country level, the scale, whether you have 1 employee, whether it works for 1,000 employees, 20,000 employees. Sure. And the third is the industry, manufacturing, retail, blah, blah, blah. And the 4th aspect of this is the compliance aspect. Is the product up to date as of today? So we split it from a Neeyamo standpoint. We split the world into 9 regions, right? Latin America, Middle East Africa, North America. And we created an army of chartered accountants, legal people, both in the country and in our delivery centers, whose job was to keep the product up to date, right? So they used to do the two aspects. They used to create use cases from an industry specific, and the
Sure.
other aspect is to identify legislative changes. For example, you were bang on COVID 2 years. The amount of changes that happened in every country was mind blowing, and these changes had to be identified. So there was a specialist team that identified these changes for each region and in each country. How do we implement it? What is because every change can be implemented in multiple methods. It's like
Sure.
lawyer or accountant reading the law, right? And how quickly should it be done, right? Should it be done in a quarter? And we are invested in this. So we have created a product which is technology superior, but please understand, I keep talking about this to everybody. Payroll product is not about the bells and whistles. It's about the functional layer. So we have an army of team across the world, both in the country and in our centers, constantly creating these use cases that are industry specific. And number two, monitoring the compliances of each of the country. What are the changes? What needs to be changed in our product? Test it and release it. So
it's a bit like machine learning, but you're doing it with human capital.
Absolutely. But there are certain things, obviously, in some of these cases, there are certain aspects that we also have an AI and ML and it automates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for a compliance change, I mean, it's very impossible because we don't even know what's coming, right? I mean, somebody has to read it, understand it, check it, create.
It's the comprehension piece that you need, isn't it?
Test it, make sure it is working, and then go live.
Have you ever asked yourself, how can I recruit payroll staff effectively? Please don't give up on your recruitment project just yet. Here at JGA Payroll Recruitment, we appreciate the difficulties associated with attracting, recruiting and retaining top payroll talent. We also understand just how costly a poor payroll hire can be. JGA Recruitment are a niche payroll recruitment agency who will partner with you to resource payroll candidates who will improve both the accuracy and efficiency of your payroll department. Contact us today on 01727 800 377 or visit jgarecruitment.com to find out more.
So there was a two-part question. So you've answered the first bit, which is great, and that's given me much better understanding. It must have been a hectic time, but obviously a successful one because you're at the other side now and you're continuing to scale. The second point, maybe slightly more controversial, Ranga, but it comes to mind because we talked a lot here about the automation of processes. We're seeing, particularly since the pandemic, a huge influx on businesses wanting to take the leap into RPA, so robotic process automation. They want to bring more AI into their business. We're seeing those components really infiltrate the payroll process now, whether you have it in-house or whether you outsource it or whether you use provider or whatever it might be. What do you think the role is of the payroll professional as we know it now in the future? Do you think many of the payroll positions for those that are still running in-house operations may well find that their role either changes to stay in line with tech? Do you think it will ultimately no longer exist?
It will evolve, Nick, to being an operational role, into a strategic role, into a technology role, into a change management role, into a compliance role. In my opinion, with new providers like Neeyamo looking at payroll as a fully tech solution, in my opinion, in the next 3-4 years, the payroll professional job would become more of a specialist, subject matter expert, adapting to technology, change management kind of role, rather than doing pure payroll operation. The mundane, the number crunching, all of that will go away. It will become a very evolved role. And if I have to have one piece of input for all these payroll professionals today, I think they should start investing towards that. Yeah. And your role will change from being this cut-off 25th last week rush, validating Excel sheet, spreadsheet, into a very, very sophisticated role in the future. And the future is not really 10 years from now. I'm talking 3-4 years from now.
Do you think alongside that, then, we're also going to see a shift in people's attitudes towards payroll? Do you think the profile of payroll will...
The shift has started. If you ask me, the shift has started.
Yeah, I would agree with
right now, already started, right? Right now, payroll professionals are seeing more and more themselves as a solution provider, as a change agent. They're not looking at them, processing salary. Right? So the change is started. The payroll as an industry is evolving. It's evolving more as a technology solution. So the change has started, right? And it's going to pick up more momentum as we go along. And as I said, in the next 3-4 years, it will be a much evolved, it will be talked in toe to toe with some of the most evolved transformations that happens from a services side, be it HR transformation, finance transformation.
Well, I'll have to bring you back to the show in 4 years, Ranga. We'll look back. We'll look back.
Well, absolutely. I'll be more than eager, Nick. And then we will be talking very different things in 4 years.
For sure. Well, sticking to the now, how, in your opinion, then, we've talked a little bit about the pandemic in terms of the future role and how that's impacted and fast-tracked some of the developments within payroll technology. But what other changes have you noticed in global organizations, sort of global payroll requirements, if you like, post-pandemic?
To have employment anywhere, right? That is the biggest shift that has happened, right? So organizations which were in 4 or 5 countries truly are in 50 countries today. Pay people in 50 different countries. Because the pandemic has made the world a level playing field. If I need software developers in Ukraine, I hired them sitting out of the US. If I need finance people in India, so I don't have to come set up office. All of that is gone. So the biggest change the pandemic is brought is every company has gone global, which is good for us. That means every company today has a need for a provider like Neeyamo.
Yeah, okay, that works. Well, let me ask you a question in a slightly different way. Bearing in that's not what you've just said to me there isn't groundbreaking. We've seen that happen across the field. Most providers I could bring on and they would say we've changed. You can recruit across global boundaries and the world of payroll, the world of business has changed post-pandemic, which is great. We're now utilizing video calls and everyone's working from home and so on and so forth. So number one, 2-part question. How is Neeyamo's payroll solution positioned to address some of the newer challenges we're now faced with, such as the things you mentioned there about the way that we are now hiring across borders and so on? And what are some of Neeyamo's biggest differentiators then in the global payroll industry? How are you different to what other providers are doing? Because presumably, and I may be incorrect here, do correct me if I'm wrong, but presumably other suppliers and vendors and solution companies out there would have spotted the same opportunities and the same challenges as Neeyamo, and they would also be trying to create solutions. So what are your main differentiators?
Actually, we saw this 7 years back. We didn't see it today, right? Our long tail was exactly this.
Okay.
What is happening today is the long tail that happened 7 years back. Nobody saw an opportunity in a long tail. We saw it 7-8 years back. We created a world-class solution, and today it is helping. Because this anywhere, everywhere working is all about long tail. Having 5 employees in Ukraine, 4 in India, 3 in Russia, 5 in Poland. We foresee this happening 7 years back, and our solution was ready to address it. And all we needed to do is just tell people, oh, this is not new for us. This was 7 years back. So the solution is ready. We've already deployed this for all the customers, except today, every company has a long tail. Before, only the large corporations had it. Now, everybody has a long tail. In fact, there are companies which only tail, right? They are in 20 countries with only 5 to 10 employees, right? So we were ready for it. We realized it was a technology. Now, our competition is building technology to address it. We built technology 7 years back to address it. Now, our competition believes that the only way to address this newer, evolved market was to build a technology solution, and they're building pieces.
In that case, if you're ahead by 7 years, just using that example, what are you working on now? What's the thing that's exciting you? What are we going to see next?
What we are working on now is what I told you in the beginning of the
Hyperloop
meeting. We are working on the straight through processing. We want to take payroll real time. We are about 80% there, 20% in the next 18 to 24 months. 18 to 24 months later, when I do a podcast to you, I will tell you that an employee himself or herself can run his or her payroll. We are creating in fulfilling that Hyperloop, which will take it to real time. right?
But we live in a world of real time. We have, instant streaming, Netflix, Uber, whatever it is. We're used to an instant mentality. So I'll be keen to see how that develops. So if I'm a global payroll professional listening to this at the moment, and I'm going to take it slightly back to the basics of global payroll here, so bear with me if you will, but I'm aware that you mentioned it as well. Non-compliance when it comes to global payroll can really lead to some significant fines or penalties, right? And we know it can really hamper business operations if we get that wrong. Now, I know that a lot of success when it comes to global payroll is formed around the ability to create robust control frameworks for global payroll compliance. So if I'm just a global payroll professional listening to this at the minute, and I'm not quite sure where to get started when it comes to creating my own control framework, and I want to make sure I've got the most efficient payroll process I can have for the accuracy and delivery of my payrolls each month, each day, whenever it might be. What advice would you give to help someone to make sure that robustness, those control frameworks are fit for purpose?
The biggest advice I would give them is to use Neeyamo. That's the number.
Of course.
One.
Yeah, we'll take that one.
If they don't use Neeyamo, I think they have to invest in a platform or a technology that builds it for them. See, building a framework. So, for example, our compliance framework is built on a technology. It's not built on a piece of paper. It's not. So, if we have to create and maintain, you should have an intuitive compliance framework that is technology driven, that will create the repository of all compliances for every country, remind you of from time to time on the compliances you need to file. If there are changes to compliances, the technology gets updated and is real time. So in my opinion, Nick, we are living in an era where building a framework means creating a technology solution. Okay. Right? So you have to invest in a technology or adopt an existing technology that is purpose fit, and then create the framework, right? For example, our compliance tool that supports our payroll solution comes preloaded with every country's compliance, and we monitor the compliance and change it as per, comes with the compliance, comes with the frequency. It can store receipts of the compliance filing and stuff like that, right? So if you ask me, either an organization or anybody needs to invest in a technology framework, especially for compliance, to stay compliant and relevant. Otherwise, it is in an individual's mind, and if he or she decides to leave the organization, they run into a much larger risk.
Fine. Right? No, that makes sense. Well, we've talked a lot about technology, but I'm going to maybe catch you off guard a little bit with this one, Ranga, but I think it's a real... I was really excited to read this about Neeyamo. Bringing it back to the employee experience, I found it really interesting to discover that Neeyamo is a 100% employee-owned organization, and you offer opportunities to your own employees to be granted an ownership stake. And I would say that's quite revolutionary in the world. I mean, I know there are other businesses that do something similar, but not many in the world of payroll in particular. And I think, you're very, very inclusive as a business as well. And you've made your HR processes and the HR solutions you provide very inclusive as well. I think these two things are hot on people's agendas at the moment, people agendas, and rightly so. But I would love to know the strategy, the vision behind that decision, and some of the impact it's had on your own employees and your retention, and I guess the overall employee experience of working for a business like Neeyamo.
Absolutely. When we started, we have two basic principles. We believe that our customers and the employee are our investors, right? So in true sense, the customer invests in trusting Neeyamo, and the employee invests by creating the solution. So from day one, we realized that we had to be an employee-owned company to be very successful. And hence, we created this massive pool of employee stock options that most of our employees have, and they are part of this journey, right? So they don't feel like they're working for someone. They feel like they're creating their own organization. And that's been our principle when we started Neeyamo. And ownership is not about somebody owning stake and somebody delivering it. The ownership is about we are in it together, and we will build this organization together, right?
No, I love that.
That's the logic of creating this employee-owned company, and that's the logic of so many hundreds of people owning ESOPs. That means they own a piece of this organization. That means every success and failure is owned by them, and they will make it happen. And that's been the philosophy behind the founding team, and we have stuck to our philosophy.
Well, I think it's brilliant. So this is a genuine hats off, kudos moment for me to say I'm a big fan of that kind of philosophy. And I hope that it brings you the retention and the vested interest in providing excellent levels of service that you're clearly doing to help you scale as you go forward. So really exciting. Last question for me before we open the vault, Ranga, is one which you probably answered a little bit during the course of the show already. But if you could predict what the future of payroll looked like, you said 4 years earlier, 5 is in my question here. So say 4 or 5 years from now, what would you say?
I would say the same thing again. I think payroll will evolve to be real time across countries. Payroll will evolve to be a self-service kind of thing where, like your app, employees will have their own ability to run payroll, and I think it will reach there sooner or later. Employee experience will improve. Organizations will start looking at payroll as a very transformative function. Today, it's looked at a very transactional function. Compliances will adapt. So what did not happen in the last 50, 60 years, it will grow to be a sophisticated function and a very transformative one and a very technology-led one. I think these are some of the top 4-5 things that will happen to payroll as a function in the next 4-5 years.
So many countries, many companies struggling to attract global payroll talent at the grassroots level, people not considering payroll as a career choice when they leave school, when they leave university. I would argue, and probably in agreement with you here, that now is probably the best time to be coming into the industry of payroll.
In fact, we have tying up with some of the universities to start global payroll as a course as part of their curriculum, because we believe the time has come for it to be identified as an industry. There has to be enough investment done at an education level for people to have a passion, like to become a doctor, engineer, chartered accountant, whatever. They should have a passion to become a payroll professional. And I believe that we as an organization are doing all it takes to excite people to take payroll as a career.
Good. Well, I'm hugely excited by the future on that regard as well. But we're going to open the vault. So 3 short, sharp questions for you, Ranga, before we close the show.
Entering the vault.
One piece of advice you would give to someone working in payroll right now?
As I spoke about, that payroll is getting changed. Please evolve yourself to the change that is coming. Yeah, the things will change in the next 3-4 years. Please make sure that you evolve yourself.
If you had the power of foresight and you could change the entire payroll industry with one action or one improvement, what would that action or improvement be?
I'll make sure all of them sign contracts with Neeyamo. I think the change, I don't think I'll have the power to do it, but I think the change will come over time. I think you need to wait. There are lots of changes needed, including looking at transformative solution and stuff like that. So I think it's important that you stay relevant and look at what are the needs of the company and change accordingly. I have a feeling a lot of organizations today are of the idea that if the payroll is not broken, don't fix it.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
That mind shift has to change, right? You have to take your payroll into the next big transformative thing. And today, large corporations don't do that. They wait for it to get broken to fix it.
Perfect. And last, this one's a bit of fun for you, Ranga. So here we go. If payroll was a song or a movie, what song or movie would it be and why?
Top Gun.
Top Gun. Yeah, you're not the first to say that. Oh, they go on. Tell me why. Why Top Gun? I mean, apart from that's a great movie.
Yeah, I think the word itself sounded Top Gun. I mean, payroll for a lot of people is Top Gun. I mean, it drives a lot of people to come to work. It's the reason that employees work. So I believe I'm going with the trend right now. It's making $1 billion. I mean, why not Top Gun, $1 billion, right? Yeah,
you're right on trend again. That's what we like to see. Well, listen, Ranga, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Payroll Podcast today. Of course, if people are interested in finding out more about Neeyamo, there will be a link in the show notes take you straight to their website, or you can go straight away. It's neeyamo.com, NEEYAMO.com. There will also be a number of links on there where you can go to various resources. They've got a fantastic blog. You can go and navigate the site. There's so much you can take away. Whether or not you decide to go with Neeyamo is completely up to you, but it's worth going to the site regardless, just to take advantage of some of the fantastic resources they do offer you in the world of global payroll. So do take a look at that. And as I mentioned, those links will be in the show notes. So you don't have to go and find it or type it into Google, click through to the show notes. You can go straight through to their website straight away. And of course, if you are a payroll leader listening to this podcast, and you need support with a global payroll related vacancy, we do support payroll hiring across Europe and into the US as well. So we can support you. Please do get in touch with either myself or any of my amazing team at jgarecruitment.com. And again, a link to that will also be in the show notes. So just leaves me to say again, a huge thank you to Ranga for joining me today on the Payroll Podcast. I look forward to bringing you the next episode real soon. Many thanks.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Payroll Podcast with Nick Day of JGA Recruitment. If you need help with a current payroll vacancy, then please get in touch with Nick and his team. All contact details can be found in the episode notes. In the meantime, to make sure you never miss a future episode, please subscribe to the show through any of your favorite podcast channels. Till next time.